My name is Adrian, and for the past 3 years, I was in what I thought was a committed, loving relationship with Sasha. We met during a friend's birthday party, one of those nights you don't expect to change your life. She was vibrant, witty, and carried herself like she knew the world belonged to her. And for a while, it felt like she gave that world to me. We were that couple, always invited to gatherings, always the solid ones in a group of friends filled with breakups and drama. Our friends, a tight circle formed mostly during college and early work years, used to joke that if Sasha and I broke up, there was no hope for the rest of them. We traveled together, hosted game nights, and even talked casually about marriage and buying a place one day. I trusted Sasha completely. She knew everything about me, my past, my fears, even the weird way I always double-check if I locked the door. In return, I thought I knew her just as well. But trust can be tricky. Sometimes it makes you blind. I ignored the subtle changes, the late replies, the new inside jokes she shared with our friend Liam, the way she'd suddenly become protective of her phone. I told myself I was overthinking. Sasha had always been independent, and I never wanted to be the controlling boyfriend. So I silenced my gut instincts, chalked it up to stress or coincidence. I didn't realize then that the calm we had built wasn't real peace. It was the quiet before the storm. A storm I never saw coming, and one that would rip through everything I thought was true to at first. It was little things, barely noticeable, easy to excuse. Sasha started to seem distant, like her mind was always somewhere else. We'd be watching a movie together, but she'd be scrolling through her phone, barely reacting even to her favorite scenes. Our conversations, once effortless and filled with laughter, became brief and functional. When I'd ask how her day was, she'd respond with vague one-word answers like, fine, or busy. She began hanging out more often with our mutual friends, particularly Liam. They were part of the same friend group, sure, but suddenly Sasha and Liam had their own little side plans, coffee meetups, errands that somehow needed both of them, long talks after group dinners. When I questioned it, she rolled her eyes. You're being insecure, she said flatly. Liam's like a brother. Don't be weird. But I couldn't shake the feeling. There was a new closeness between them. Shared glances, little whispers during game nights, laughter that stopped the moment I walked into the room. It wasn't what they did, it was what they didn't do. Sasha stopped including me in things. I'd find out about outings only through Instagram stories. When I brought it up, she dismissed it like I was being dramatic. Even our friends changed. People I had known for years suddenly felt off. Jokes that used to be shared with me were now inside quips between Sasha and Liam. Conversations at group dinners had awkward pauses when I entered. Eye contact became scarce. The warmth I used to feel from them, gone. One night, as I was grabbing beers from the fridge during a small get-together, Marcus, a friend I'd grown close with, pulled me aside. He hesitated, looking torn. Hey, Adrian, just keep your eyes open, all right? He said quietly, not meeting my gaze. Before I could ask him what he meant, he shook his head and mumbled, forget it, before walking away. That should have been my wake-up call. But I was still clinging to the idea that Sasha wouldn't do something like that. Not her. Not us. So I buried the unease, smiled through the discomfort, and convinced myself that love meant trusting someone, even when it hurt to do so. It was supposed to be a normal night, something fun to break the tension that had slowly been growing between me and Sasha. I thought maybe a game night would bring us back together, remind her of what we had. I spent the afternoon cleaning the apartment, ordering her favorite snacks, and setting up the table with cards and board games. A few of our usual friends came over, Marcus, Talia, Jenna, and of course Liam. From the moment Sasha walked in, she was distant. She barely acknowledged the effort I'd put in and went straight to pouring herself a drink. She laughed louder than usual, especially at Liam's jokes. At first, I brushed it off as her trying to unwind. Maybe she'd had a stressful day. But as the night wore on, the unease settled in deeper. Sasha kept gravitating toward Liam, sitting close, whispering things that made him smirk, touching his arm when she laughed. It wasn't subtle. I saw Marcus watching too, his jaw tight, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to believe I was overreacting, but my gut twisted every time their eyes locked. We played a card game that included a round of personal questions. It was meant to be lighthearted, fun, even. But alcohol has a way of loosening lips and hard truths. When Sasha drew a card that read, If you could change one thing about your relationship, what would it be? She didn't hesitate. I don't know. Maybe I'd want someone who actually knows how to take the lead for once, she said, raising her glass with a crooked smile. Everyone went quiet. The joke didn't land. I tried to laugh it off, but I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Her words weren't just a dig, they were a declaration. Liam didn't even look surprised. After a few awkward moments, the game resumed, but the air was different. Heavy, tense. People began leaving soon after, offering me polite nods and forced smiles. Marcus lingered for a second, as if he wanted to say something again, but Sasha shot him a glance that made him think twice. When the door finally closed behind the last guest, I turned to Sasha. She was already on her phone, scrolling, smirking to herself. Is there someone else? I asked, my voice calm but shaking underneath. She didn't look up right away. When she did, there wasn't shock or guilt in her eyes, only something colder. I braced myself, not for the answer, but for the way it might be delivered. She just stared at me for a beat, then said, "Do you really want to know?" And right then, I knew. There was a long silence after Sasha asked, "Do you really want to know?" It was the kind of silence that seems to echo louder than any scream. I stood there, waiting, hoping, naively, that she'd deny it, that she'd laugh it off as a cruel joke, or at least show a flicker of regret. But instead, she shrugged and said it plainly. Yes, I cheated. 3 words. No tremble in her voice. No hesitation. No apology. Just cold confirmation. I felt the air leave my lungs. The walls, the floor, the room. Everything felt like it was collapsing inward. I stared at her, searching for something human in her expression, shame, sadness, even anger. But all I saw was that same casual smirk she'd worn all evening. Why? I asked, barely able to push the word out. She leaned against the kitchen counter like we were just chatting about what movie to watch. Because I needed a real man, she said, dragging out the word like it tasted good. Someone who actually takes charge. Someone who knows what he wants and doesn't spend his life trying to keep everyone happy. I blinked, stunned by how easily she twisted the knife. I wasn't even angry yet. I was still trying to process the shift in reality. Just hours ago, I thought this was a rough patch. Something we could fix. Now, I was face to face with a person I didn't recognize. She sipped from her glass and continued, like she was proud of it. You're too soft, Adrian. Too predictable. Always playing nice, always accommodating. I needed someone with fire. My throat was dry. Who is it? I asked, even though a part of me already knew. She didn't answer right away. She looked at me like I was slow to catch on. Then, with that same maddening smirk, she said, Liam. Liam. The name hit harder than the confession. My chest tightened, not just from heartbreak, but from betrayal that cut deeper than I'd ever known. Liam, my friend since college. The guy I'd let crash on my couch during his worst breakup. The one I had trusted with every part of my life. I tried to speak, but no words came out. My mind was replaying 1,000 moments. The shared beers, the road trips, the heart-to-hearts. And now I saw them differently. I saw them for what they truly were, a setup. A slow unraveling that I never even noticed until the thread was completely gone. You too, how long? I managed to ask. Does it matter? She replied, as if the duration somehow made it less cruel. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand answers. But all I could do was stand there, frozen, watching the person I loved and the friend I trusted fade into strangers. Arrogant, unapologetic strangers who didn't even flinch as they destroyed me. And in that moment, I realized the relationship I thought I had never truly existed. After Sasha's confession, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed while she slept in the other room like nothing had happened. By morning, she was gone, out for coffee, probably with Liam. My world was cracked in half, but hers was running smoothly. That alone felt like betrayal. I needed to talk to someone who would understand. I messaged Marcus first. He had always been the most grounded, the one I thought I could count on. Man, I'm so sorry, he said when I told him. That's rough, but maybe she just needed something different. You know, I paused. You mean this is my fault? No, I'm just saying. Sasha's always been a little intense. You're more laid back. Maybe she needed more direction. The words stung more than I expected. I moved on, calling Jenna next. She listened quietly, then said, Look, I'm not taking sides. Sasha told us things too. That you were kind, but maybe too soft. Like, she didn't feel challenged. Challenged? Since when did loyalty become weakness? Then I talked to Ethan, one of my oldest friends in the group. He was silent for a long time. Then he finally said, I knew. I saw it happening months ago. I just didn't want to get in the middle of it. My throat tightened. You knew she was cheating? With Liam? He sighed. It wasn't my place, man. And there it was. The final punch. The confirmation that it wasn't just Sasha or Liam. It was all of them. My entire circle of friends, people I'd laughed with, cried with, celebrated birthdays with, had either stood by or subtly sided with her. Not one of them had my back when it really mattered. I wasn't just losing a girlfriend. I was losing a tribe, a family I had chosen, and they had chosen her. That morning, I stood in my kitchen, coffee cold in my hand, looking around at the framed photos on the wall. Smiles. Memories. All fake, all expired. The truth was loud and clear now. I had no one left in my corner. And for the first time in a long while, I knew I had to face this storm completely alone. The hours after the truth came out were quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that buzzes, the kind that presses on your chest and won't let you breathe. I sat alone on the couch, staring at nothing, letting the truth wash over me again and again. Sasha cheated. Liam was the other man. And my friends? They either excused it or stayed silent. It would have been easy to explode, to shout, to curse her name, to confront Liam with fists clenched. But the anger faded into something deeper. Reflection. I thought about all the time, love, and loyalty I had given these people. All the ways I had shown up for them, supported them, put their needs above mine. I had been solid. I had been safe. But somewhere along the line, they mistook kindness for weakness. They mistook loyalty for submission. And they mistook my silence for indifference. They were wrong. I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and pulled out a duffel bag. No rage. No noise. Just a quiet, steady rhythm as I packed what I needed. Clothes, essentials, my charger, my journal. I didn't take everything. I didn't need to. I was done with the past. Sasha walked in halfway through, clearly not expecting to see me so calm. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, ready for another emotional outburst. But I gave her nothing. You're really leaving? She asked, almost sounding surprised. I zipped up the bag and turned to face her. No hate. No pleading. Just clarity. I gave you everything. You wanted more? I hope you find it, I said. She rolled her eyes, still deflecting, still smug. I walked past her, stopped at the door, and looked back one last time. You'll remember this silence louder than anything I could scream. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out. No yelling. No second chances. Just the weight of finality in every quiet step. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't trying to be the bigger person or hold things together. I was just choosing me. And it felt powerful. The first few days alone were brutal. The silence in my new apartment wasn't empowering, it was hollow. No laughter, no familiar routines, no Sasha humming in the kitchen or the group chats buzzing on my phone. I had walked away from everything I thought was my life, and now I was left with just me. But maybe that was the point. I cut ties with all of them. Sasha, Liam, the so-called friends who chose convenience over loyalty. Deleted numbers. Left group chats. Blocked what needed to be blocked. It was painful, sure, but necessary. Like cleaning a wound so it could finally start to heal. I threw myself into rebuilding. Not just my environment, but myself. I joined a gym. Started running again. Found a therapist who didn't coddle me, but challenged me to ask the hard questions. I signed up for a cooking class, picked up sketching again, took on more responsibilities at work. I stopped living in the past and started shaping a future. There were still moments when the pain punched through, like when I passed the coffee shop where Sasha and I used to go, or when a song we once danced to played unexpectedly. There were nights I stared at the ceiling, wondering what I could have done differently. But those moments became less frequent and less sharp. With time, I stopped seeing the breakup as a loss. It was a release from a relationship built on pretense, from friends who only stood by when it was easy, from a version of myself that stayed quiet to keep the peace. Now, for the first time, I was building a life that belonged to me, not one shaped by others' expectations or validation. And in that, I finally found peace. It had been months since I'd seen either of them, Sasha or Liam. By then, I had rebuilt my life brick by brick. I was healthier, more grounded, and at peace in a way I hadn't been in years. So when I bumped into them at a downtown cafe, I didn't feel anger. Just detachment. They looked different. Not bad, but not the power couple they had tried to be. Liam looked restless, eyes darting. Sasha wore a tight smile, but there was something hollow behind it, like a performance she couldn't commit to anymore. She noticed me first. "Adrian," she said, surprised, a flicker of something, regret, maybe, in her voice. I offered a polite nod. "Hey." There was a brief silence. She shifted, clearly unsure whether to push further. "You look good," she said. "Thanks," I replied calmly, holding her gaze for a moment before glancing at Liam. He couldn't even look me in the eye. I didn't ask how they were doing. I didn't care to. "I've got somewhere to be," I said, stepping past them. As I walked away, I didn't feel bitter or victorious. Just free. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. I chose peace. Looking back now, I understand the power of quiet strength. The kind that doesn't shout or demand to be seen, but simply walks away when something, or someone, is no longer worthy of your energy. For a long time, I thought love meant fighting to hold on. That being the good guy meant enduring, fixing, forgiving. But real strength? It's knowing when to let go. When to stop proving your worth to people too blind or too selfish to see it. Walking away from Sasha, from Liam, from the friends who turned their backs, it wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing I've ever done. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't break. I just picked up my keys and walked out the door. And in doing so, I reclaimed myself. Peace doesn't come from forcing things to stay. It comes from knowing you were true to yourself, even when others weren't. It comes from letting go of noise, of betrayal, and of the need for closure that never comes. Some things you don't fight for. Some things you walk away from, with your head held high.